thank you very much for tuning in and welcome to Things They Forgot to Teach You in Business School. I'm your host, Scott Rosen, Managing Director and Advisory Board Member for SRCC and Para GmbH. And today's video is about the problems that you can encounter when you market your idea to your boss and more directly when you pitch your startup to an investor. One of the primary reasons we started making this series was because we had begun seeing a run of entrepreneurs and startup executives come to us after their concepts and ideas were turned down by a family office or an institutional investor. If you're in this business, you know that it's one of negativity and rejection. It's the unfortunate side of life. And it can take several months of phone calls, emails, and false starts just to line up a sit down with an interested party. Every opportunity has to count. And what the entrepreneurs explained to us was that most of their meetings were ending poorly and they couldn't figure out why. So we listened to their pitch and noticed something very peculiar. The ideas were good, the decks were decent, but the style for the presenter could have been a little bit better. We noticed that the project speakers were either being too casual with their approach or were going too quickly for anyone to understand what direct problems they would solve for their clients. They weren't answering the questions that their audience had. On other occasions, we also noticed that the stories they were telling and the humor they were using seemed to miss their marks. Each of us has their own interests and grows up hearing and learning certain parables or stories from one source or another. They may even contain anecdotes or lessons that we pick up along the way, and they can have a direct effect upon our lives. But what we quite often take for granted is that everyone is familiar with the same narratives. This can even extend into hobbies, sports, or extracurricular activities. Football to Americans, for example, has a very different connotation to those throughout the rest of the world. And that being said, not everyone is familiar with the rules, knows the famous players, or has a favorite team. When you're presenting, choose your analogies and your references carefully. You don't want to risk losing your audience when you're trying to drive a point home, or worse, find out they root for another team. Try to keep your references more general unless you're absolutely positive that your audience will understand what you're trying to say. Sometimes when we present, the nervousness begins to subside. We start to loosen up and become a little bit more casual with our audience. Tiny changes start to take shape. We may no longer stand up straight, or we may find ourselves leaning up against the table. Worse, we may even start dropping the formalities. It's these cases we need to caution you about. Dropping someone's title or starting to call them by their first name when we don't have permission can be devastating to your pitch. This is especially true in Europe, where titles are hard-earned and fiercely defended. If you're lucky enough to land a meeting with a family office or an investment manager at a VC, please take the time to learn the proper name and titles of all the people you're going to be presenting to. A lack of respect on your part can make you look unprofessional and come away with a negative result. Telling a funny story or a joke at the start of your pitch is a great way to break the ice with your audience. Most everyone likes to laugh, and having a tale which they can relate to makes things move well into your direction. Just be careful to avoid the taboo subjects. You know what they are. We've seen presenters joke about politics or world events only to have them fall flat on their faces. The bottom line, if there's even a shred of doubt in your mind about telling a joke or a story, keep it out of your presentation. You'll only risk alienating your audience and losing the pitch. In our previous videos, we offered you tips on how to move quickly through your presentation so that you can finish on time. Now, we're letting you know that in some cases, it's okay to go over. There are certain signals which your audience can feed you that will let you know when it's acceptable to run over time. The most direct correspond to body language. Men and women have a tendency to sometimes nod along with you when you're making your points. Combine this with a tilted head, and these form the first signals for you to continue developing your points. Also, have one of your teammates watch the audience for these signs. If the audience is tilting their heads and nodding along, it means they're engaged with you, and your teammates should lean forward in their chair. This is your signal to start taking extra time on any particular point that you happen to be making at that moment. Conversely, if the audience is not showing positive signs that they're engaged, then your teammates should be sitting back in their chair. This acts as your signal to continue to your next point. Try it at your next meeting and see how it goes. It works. Presentation style and demeanor are very personal and can have a vast impact on the outcome of your meeting. If you're going to pitch your project to your boss or your idea to an investor, then you should do your best to remain professional at all points in time. If someone doesn't introduce themselves to you in a casual manner, then stick to their formal designations. Learn the titles and how to pronounce someone's name ahead of time, too. If you're not sure, ask them. You can count on it being a popular question, and the proper pronunciation can change your experience completely. So there you have it, and that's it for us today. Thanks again for tuning in. Your support matters, so help us out by giving us a like, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos on how to make a better presentation. Every share helps, so repost us to help spread the word, and we're very grateful for your support. If you want to book us for a private consultation with your startup or your school, or if you just have questions or ideas, feel free to let us know by email. Address is in the description below. Best of luck with your next project, and as always, we'll see you next time.